Middle Cough.
Hey, babes.
There's a lot going on. In fact, it is still going on as we record on this Sunday night. We are live on YouTube. So for everybody on YouTube, hello. Like this video. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. And
smash the like.
Smash that like button. If you're listening to the podcast, go check out the YouTube channel. If you're listening, we appreciate you listening. No matter where you are, though, go to iTunes, leave us a review. That's how you get in the mailbag. And you also help us out when you leave a review on iTunes. So we appreciate it. Tell us your favorite bar, leave us a question, and that's how you get in the ham mailbag.
We have a Facebook page as well, Hayner Middlecoff, easy to find. Give that thing a like. You can follow us on this little thing called Facebook. And, yeah, it's where we're at. Facebook, obviously a lot on YouTube, and the podcast, which if you're listening to this, you subscribe to, unless you're watching this on YouTube. So a lot of different channels, but mainly subscribe to the podcast, watch the YouTube channel, and check out the Facebook page.
And as we record this, I mean, we'll see what happens here. You know, by the time, if you're listening to this not live, you already know the answer to what happens. But you are on a heater right now, based on you just pushed all the right buttons on Saturday night, a 3-team college football parlay, which was incredible to follow along with.
Well, it was more as just, a couple dogs in the house. You're probably a little truer dog than me, though. I got pretty in deep in my 2 years.
Yeah.
We both, got degrees.
Yeah, it's not like your honorary Jew thing. I mean, this is legit.
Yeah, exactly. And I really just wanted to put some money on Fresno State, and then I already told you the story. I'm not going to go too much into it. I was going to bet on our boy Jim McElwain. I was late. Luckily, I didn't because he got beat like 75-3. I don't know if that was the exact score, but LSU looked pretty good. So I had $100 in my account. I needed to place a bet. And I just threw together a little 3-teamer. The Homa thing I'd put, like last week we were bullshitting about it. I was like, did you see John Rahm's like 3.5-1? And I just looked at the list of names. I understand John Rahm being 3.5-1. He's in a terrible field. Well, terrible field. Max Homa, who is easily probably a top 5 player in this field, was 60-1. So I was like, I don't think I would have bet on him if he was 20-1, but I saw 60-1. I'm like, well, this guy is clearly one of the up-and-coming young Americans. He's played well. He's won last year. Cal guy. They're playing at Silverado. I'm sure I would be shocked if Cal didn't play Silverado when he was playing it for Cal's golf team, right? It's not like he hadn't played there. I just put a couple things together. It was just, I was like, yeah, I'll throw $50 on the value.
Yeah. And now, as we record this, as we do this show, he took the lead.
Yeah, but you got to be careful when a guy's behind him on par 5s. It's like the Masters when a guy takes the lead.
He was behind, and now he's in the lead.
I know, but it's like the guy that he has the lead over gets to play the holes. He's birding a par 5. It's
I understand,
a little like the Masters.
But I'm just saying he just is in the lead.
He's in the lead. Yeah, he's in the lead.
And $50 pays how much?
$3,000
times 6. D.
Yeah. So 50 turns into 3,000. So I would have made $5,600 off $150. We won, guy. I mean, we turned 300 into we'll get 580.
That, but this is I just want people to understand as we're doing this, you might shriek uncontrollably at some point in time here today, as you already have.
I did it much more this morning. I fell asleep the UCLA game. Like that was my last leg of the parlay.
Oh wait, you didn't know until this morning?
Did not know.
Oh my God. I also fell asleep I fell asleep right after UCLA scored with 55 seconds left to take the lead.
Yeah.
I woke up, Jake Hayner, future first round. I mean, probably the number 1 overall quarterback, I think, in this coming up draft.
We've both reached out to Jake. We're going to reach out through Fresno State. If you're listening and you're friends of Jake, you need to let him know that we are his people.
Yes, that's right.
We are his people.
Let him know that I said, we talked about this a couple years ago, Jake should have gotten the UW job. They should have given him the job, not Jacob Eason. They went with Jacob Eason. Jake Hayner said, I believe I can play. And they're like, yeah, cool. Hang around in a year, you can play. He's like, no, I believe I can play right now. He went to the pride of the Central Valley, the V. He went to Fresno, balled out last year. Is just the toughest son of a bitch I've ever seen on a football field.
Yeah.
I
do remember you talking about him. I have to go full disclosure. I didn't know who he was, even though he's from like our area. I mean, he's like my neighbor. He probably grew up in a little bigger home than I'm sitting in right now. But We are. I'm at a loss for how sweet he is watching him play. Like, he is everything you want in a quarterback of a team that you are rooting for. And I'm full on. I know you are too.
Yeah, and even if he's everything, I think that's the beauty, right? Is like there are people not even rooting for Fresno State that watch this guy and went, "Holy hell!"
Yeah.
Like this is what you want. I tweeted a poll last night during the game, and I wrote, "You okay over there? You okay? Keep an eye on Max
Yeah,
Homa?
I'm
Keep
good.
an eye.
I'm good.
You got to keep an eye." And I was just like, Max Homa, Jake Hayner would start for my team. Yes or no? 82% of people said yes. And I'd said 2 weeks ago after the Oregon game that I thought he'd start for 9 of the 12 teams in the Pac-12. I need to amend that to 12 of the 12. I mean, I think he'd start from, like, if you knew you were getting
you see Dart.
Dart's
you
good.
were working.
No, I saw Dart. I mean, Dart carrying the legacy of extremely handsome USC quarterbacks.
Utah guy.
John,
pretty fascinating story. Dart kind of came out of nowhere and then became a big recruit like a senior year.
Last year in the COVID year.
Had you heard of him before? I honestly swear to God, you're probably a little more locked into the back
I'd heard of him
at USC.
because when he signed.
Never heard of him.
When he signed, it was a big deal because he had not been a major recruit. You know, his touchdown to interceptions last year in high school, he threw 67 touchdowns and 4 picks, I think was the number.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But we're talking about Jake Hayner today.
Yeah, we're talking about Jake Hayner. Yeah,
talking about Jake Hayner today. You're right. I'm glad you did the shout out. Anybody that knows Jake Hayner, you let him know.
Yeah, point him in our direction.
Point him in our direction. Just say these guys not losers. You should talk to them. They want to talk to you.
Tell him you could be the guest after Joe Staley just came on last week.
Yeah, that's right. And
we also got some Niners coming on down the pipe.
We'll reach out to some people, but
my mom, I got a text today from Joan Middlecoff, my lovely supporting and just fantastic mother. Yeah. And her text was like, again, it kind of comes out of nowhere, like 11 o'clock in the morning, games are on. When did Derek Carr block you, question mark. I'm like, what? Sometimes I think she listens to things like way late or who knows. I don't know if she knows exactly what she's hitting on Apple iTunes. I think she listens through her iPad so she can be cleaning and it's playing. So it could have been from 6 months ago. She could be listening and just think it's up to date. If you're not following sports quite as closely, you wouldn't totally know if you just hear people talking about stuff.
Yep.
And I said, Mom, I don't know. He blocked a lot of people. And I wonder if it was Mark Bedane telling him to do that, or Mark B, the president of the Raiders, telling him to do that to get you out of. Yeah, I was like, well, Mom, he's gone.
Maybe she's
now.
on to something.
Yeah,
maybe she's on to something. Maybe she's on to something. John, this show, and you guys, you did it again this weekend. You did it again all last week. You just keep doing it, and we love it. We appreciate it. You kept sending us pictures of you hanging out, having some Tito's. We are sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka. How great is that? Huh?
I mean, does it ever get old, guy?
No.
Does it ever get old? What do they say? Pat Hill used to say, "We never apologize for winning," and we'll talk about in the NFL. I never apologize for Tito's. Not that I would have to apologize for Tito's. It's actually one of a greeting that everyone's enjoying talking about it. But I'm just so proud. I know you are too. Well, the show is so proud to have these guys involved. I get so much joy when I see people sending us a text, or most of them are DMs or tweets or Instagrams at like 9 a.m. on Friday. Be like, yeah, I'm starting, right? It's Saturday, Sunday. I totally get it. We got some independent videos from people today, just having a good old time. Sometimes I forget, we work on Sunday, so we can't quite get after it. But a lot of people are, and we got some videos, and they're great. Tito's, #1 vodka in America, no big deal.
Yeah, what people discover very quickly, some people say, "Hey, we want to." So I got some Tito's to support, and then they discover very quickly it's a fantastic product. Like it's very easy to say, "Hey, Tito's is great," because people get Tito's and they go, "Oh yeah, this is great." Or people have already been loving Tito's because, like you said, it's #1 in its category, and bam, they already know what it is, right?
Yeah.
So here's what it is. It's a vodka. You're aware of this. It's a vodka. It turns out it's the best vodka because the guy that invented it, his name's Tito, started with nothing. Had to bet on himself and bet and bet and bet and built and built and built and started winning award after award after award after award. It's like, well, why is it better? Like, so, well, I mean, it's 6 times distilled in copper pots, not columns. Is it more labor intensive? You're damn right it is. But Look at the fruits of the labor. It's
I
number
know.
one. It's number one.
It's number one.
So, make whatever drink you want. We're big John Daly's. Like we try to give different recipes, but I think we can keep just saying, make the John Daly.
Yeah,
Get the
because
lemonade.
I do think a lot of people,
Get the
even
iced
if you've been a vodka drinker, if you weren't a golfer, you might not have had a John Daly. Like it's not, I would say, the most. Like if you're gonna have a vodka drink, a lot of people have martinis, a lot of people have vodka tonics and vodka sodas. Try a John Daly. Just go to your bar, especially if it's sunny outside. Just say John Daly. If you're playing golf, definitely say John Daly.
Distilled and bottled. Somebody sent us a photo from the golf course the other day. I wonder how that round turned out for those two guys.
There were ways it felt like they were on hole one.
It's like, wait, you got a handle in the golf cart? Is that allowed?
Yeah, they were going pulls on like I was gonna say. Then I was like, I don't know if Tito will approve. Take a pull every bad shot.
Yeah.
It could be a lot of pulls.
If you're in a golf cart with a handle like the big one, you're holding on to that as you drive, probably.
I
right?
would imagine they're pouring drinks. Would be my.
Well, they
guess.
absolutely are, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't fit in the cup holder.
You could put a couple towels in the little crate behind you, so it doesn't.
Yeah,
break.
maybe if you got a little ice.
Yeah.
Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Podcast also brought to you by mybookie.ag, promo code HAM1. That's where the action, as it's happening right now, is happening.
I just want people to know, mybookie.ag, promo code HAM1. We get asked a lot. Where do you guys gamble? How do I gamble? Where do I gamble? Mybookie.ag, promo code HAM1. Already in the bag. I turned $100 into $26.50. As I'm recording this, this guy misses his putt. I might turn $50 more into $3K. That's where magic happens. Mybookie.ag, promo code 1. You can bet on individual games.
Ham in the number one.
Ham1. You can bet on individual games. Obviously, there's a Monday night game, Packers Lions. You can just put money on the money line, on the spread, on the over-under. You can do parlays, in which I did. You can bet any other sport, college football. There's a million college football games. I realized this watching college football on Saturday. I was like, I'm pretty worn out by the end of the day. Unlike the NFL, there are like 2 or 3 main games you're pretty locked into. And in college football, it's just like, holy shit. Slate after slate, and then Haberman's calling a game, and there's like 7 other games going on, and then there's another slate of night games. Like, it is pretty.
Were you pretty locked in on my Ducks game?
Well, yeah, it was 17-7. I'm like, they're not going to screw this up. But I was really, you were the warm up, the appetizer,
absolutely,
for the Dogs, UCLA.
Yep.
And it lived up to the hype. As Ted said, it was what was his exact quote? The game no one will ever forget.
I think, a rivalry for generations and a comeback for the ages, I think is what he called it. John, as you're talking about Ham 1, we're not going to dive into this now. We got so much other stuff to get to, but I always love an early look ahead at week 3. Again, I'm not going to dive into this now, but there's some interesting games next week. Jets at Denver. Is that a candidate? Bucks at Rams is a great game. That's a stay away in terms of a lock, but that could be a really fun game. Bears at Browns, Chargers at Chiefs is next week. Colts at Titans is next week.
That's a big
is that going to be Jacoby in a must-win game? Thursday night can actually be fun.
Jacob Eason. Jacoby's now in Miami.
Jacob Eason, yeah. Again, should have been Jake Hayner. Should have been Jake Hayner, man. But anyway, again, we'll get into that more later. But just a quick look ahead. So many great options. MyBookie.ag.
Let me celebrate.
Number 1.
Yeah! 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 He just hit
a birdie. He just birdied.
And it wasn't just a birdie. It was like a 15-foot right to lefter, just sweeping breaker. He's now in the lead with a par 5 coming up. So it's just breaking my way, guy. It's just breaking my way.
What are you going to do on Monday night?
Should I send out a couple texts? Will you marry me right now? Just write it.
Oh my God.
God, it feels good.
All right.
You guys want to talk some football?
Yeah, who's going to feel better than you tonight? Nobody.
Dinner on me this week, guy.
Well, I know we're going to get dinner this week, actually. That'll be for later in the show, though. Stay tuned for that. We got the Raider game. We got the Niner game. We got a ton of other NFL stuff that happened on Sunday. Very interesting stuff that happened on Sunday to get to today. Let's start. It was far from our lock of the week, right? the 49ers game with the Eagles, it was at times, I mean, that game was weird in some ways. It was, when you say you don't apologize for wins, I think this is part of what you're talking about. Especially, and I had to I remind myself of this sometimes back and forth between college and NFL, is that I watch college games and NFL games differently, right? In college, it matters how you look. In the NFL, it matters how you look, in that we reach some conclusions like, oh, do you have a problem in your offensive line, or are you injury riddled, whatever. But how you win, especially second game of a 2-week road trip, does not matter at all. And the Niners took care of business against Philadelphia. They took care of business. That's simple as that.
Well, think about the game that you called yesterday, like the talent discrepancy of Stony Brook. Or Oregon is the equivalent of a team that might be a 2 seed in the playoffs at this rate, right? And they're playing a team that, how many guys on Stony Brook would even make Oregon's roster? It happened all over the country, right? Even Fresno State upsets UCLA. On paper, they probably don't have as many starters that would play for UCLA. But in the NFL, the Eagles, and you and me have been talking them up now for a couple weeks, and really I'd say maybe even longer, 3 or 4. Once I started,
you probably said like a month ago that you were starting to hear about the Eagles, and
then they just felt a lot better about their team because they realized their lines were good, and the main thing was they're like, our quarterback's not bad, and I think right away you realize in that first quarter when it was 3-0, but it kind of felt like it could have been 13-0. And you're like, this team's really good. The place is going nuts. I've been to countless games there, right? I lived there for 2 years. I think they came in kind of like, okay, we're playing one of the better teams in the NFC in their mind, right? And in everyone's mind, the Niners are. And then they start believing, are we good? I would say after the first quarter, if you and I were, John and Guy from South Philly and owned a little deli and we're sitting, we might be sitting in the 300 section. I'd be looking at you. You'd be looking at me like, fuck. We win the NFC. We're pretty good, right?
Yep.
And it was just, you realize right away, like, they got good players too. And Jalen's hitting these, at least attempting these deep bombs. He does throw the one deep bomb where he hits out of his own end zone. I had the quick thought, are the Niners going to be down like 17-0 at halftime? To me, that was 100% the key. I even saw Kyle mention this. He's like, we were up 7-3 at half. He's like, that's the craziest thing. It was like,
yeah,
that was not the game you witnessed, right? It could have easily been 17 to, let's even give the Niners that touch, 17-7 or something at half.
Yeah, or even, to me, it felt like it should have been just like 13-3. Like that's what it felt like. And that would have been a scary position to be in. It felt like they were going to win because they had the lead in the game that they shouldn't. But I do think part of this is going to be, like we warned a little bit, because you've been saying it for a month. I watched them. We both watched them last week and came away thinking they're pretty good. It might be that Philly's just a pretty solid team this year. Now, how many wins does it really translate to? I don't know. It's a long season. Things change over the course of the year.
They lost one of their better players today. Brandon Graham tore his Achilles.
Yeah, early, right?
Yeah.
So, because the first series did not look good. Like the Niners get blasted off the line. Yeah, it was
first series guy. I'd say the first the first quarter did not look good.
And I thought Garoppolo had some opportunity. He threw a few balls. Like, is this about to kind of get weird? And he figured. I mean, he righted the ship. Like he was good. Garoppolo was good on Sunday against the Eagles.
I thought early on he was not jittery. He didn't look scared or anything to me. He just looked like his balls were going high, being off, and I was thinking it's going to be hard to win this game with an inaccurate quarterback. And ultimately, I think your college analogy, if I'm Alabama, if I'm Oklahoma, if I'm all these really good teams, when I am playing someone who's not just my exact equal, right? When they're not playing each other, when I'm playing someone who's not my equal, I can just stay to my identity, whatever that is for those individual teams, and I'm just going to win. I just got to stay the course for 4 quarters. In the NFL, a lot of times, like, you got to pivot. You got to try different things that are working. You can't just stay to your identity. And Kyle consistently, in this game, he easily could have pivoted. Now, he was lucky because they didn't score touchdowns, right? They played great situational football. They were able to get off the field after they hit the deep bomb and hold them to, I guess it turned them over on downs. Remember, they got a huge goal line stand. They have an identity, and they just kind of just never got off course, and they kept running the ball. They kept wearing them out. They started getting first downs. And I think a lot of younger coaches as you see with Sirianni. And in fairness, he doesn't know what their identity is. So you have one team that has a clear fucking identity. We're going to run the ball, whether it's with our 7th running back, guys you've never heard of, it doesn't matter. And we're going to keep George Kittle in here. We're going to keep motioning 44 around, and we're just going to run it down your throat.
Yep.
And we're cool with getting 2 and 3 yards because eventually we'll hit a couple that get 7 or 8 yards. But we will get first down after first down. And as Javon Kinlaw said, which I think is a little overzealous for a guy that made his first appearance this year and is only in his second year, said they folded. I don't think they folded. I just think that they imposed their will on a team and just won that way. Like it was ultimately you won 17-11. Like I don't think they tapped out or whatever. You just kind of were able to push them around eventually because you have something that you do that you've mastered, right? The zone, right, their running scheme.
But it takes, and I think this is where you give the Eagles a break on it, right? You have to have done it and won with it, especially when it's a run, when it's running the football that you rely on. You have to trust because you're not going to score, right? You're not going to score 21 points in 4.5 minutes necessarily, and all of a sudden now the Niners can't do that. We know they can, but you have to trust that this over 4 quarters is going to work. And the way you trust that is that over the course of a season and a few seasons, you see it work.
But you can't do it too when you're down big. If they would have been down 17-0 in the first half, they might have had to get a little more pass happy.
Right.
To me, once they were only down 3-0, but it felt like, God, it feels like they're down 2 touchdowns. The score does dictate how you can stay kind of true to what you're doing. And you could argue sometimes with less experienced coaches, it actually, the feel of a game can throw them off. Or it's just, you're okay. You're okay. Even though it's like, I'm thinking they're not okay. Are they going to lose? But that goal line stand was really, and it goes back to what Belichick said, because you would text me, and I'm thinking the same thing about, like, God, D'Amico, this is not looking great. You know, I'd say the first 20 minutes of the game. Belichick's a big believer in this, like, yards. Yards are the most irrelevant thing ever. And at one point in time, 15, 20 minutes in the game, they already had like 200 yards of offense. It's about scoring points. Like, that's the point of the fucking game. So you could have 700 yards, but if you only have 20 points of offense, it's like, well, you're actually not you're not executing when it matters, right? You can get all these yards, the 20s to 20s, which is a big deal, but you have to score touchdowns.
Air raid.
And they just couldn't score touchdowns. And he got, like, you saw one major difference today. Kyle did not really get no trickeration, was very straightforward the majority of the game. They ran Philly special, like on a 4th down play at the goal line. That's pretty nuts. Which I don't mind it, but I probably, if I bet Nick Sirianni will look back, wouldn't you run that play more on 1st or 2nd down and a 4th down play a more normal play?
Somebody else ran Philly special. A college team ran Philly special on Saturday.
Jake Hayner?
I don't think it was them. Jake says the saying in baseball is he didn't have his fastball, had to rely on it off-speed stuff. This is from YouTube. Well, the first 27 minutes of the game, Jimmy didn't have his fastball or his off-speed. You know, we've talked about this a lot before, which is that if you get any individual team or any individual player in any sport, your ceiling is only relevant if you play to your ceiling a lot, right? Like every pitcher that's pitched in Major League Baseball, by and large, most of them once can have a 7-inning, 2-hit performance, right?
If you're a big league pitcher, you could have a good.
If you're a football team, you can have. That's why we say a season is so long, is because there are so many things that have to happen just for one play to work, right? 11 guys have to be pulling on the same rope, and then you got to do it again, and then you got to do it again. So putting together one 9-play, 77-yard drive is great, but it gets you as many points as all the rest of the drives get you. And so when I think what really separates teams, what really separates players is how do you perform when you don't have your best stuff? Can you find another way? Because that's going to happen a lot, whether it's because of you, whether it's because of injuries, whether it's because somebody else takes something away from you, right? Like, how do you perform when you're not firing on all cylinders or when you're not just as dynamic as you normally are? And that's where specifically running the football. Yeah. Running the football is, for a lot of teams, an answer to that, being able to run the football.
They were like, the Eagles were clearly in a different universe than the Lions, but they're still trying to find themselves. I think if the Niners would have started this game against an LA, against a Seattle, against the way Arizona's playing right now, it would have cost. I think we
Yeah.
can agree there. Now,
Yes.
this is part of, let's roll it back 4 months ago. And you mentioned this before we hit record today. Unlike college football, where if the game you were calling had stayed the entire game 17-7, like, I'm sorry, Oregon, you're dropping in the rankings. Maybe not far, but you're no longer 2 or 3. I got to put you at 5 or 6. No one gives a shit. The only people that run top, 32 rankings, power polls, don't mean anything to anyone. It's just the media doing it for their own money. It has nothing to do with anything like the polls do in college football. You don't get any style points. You can win a game 2-0. You can win a game 50-0. You can win a game 21-20. It's just irrelevant. You just have to win. All you look up is who's 2-0, who's 0-2, and who's 1-1 right now. No one. Now, it's on the coaching staff and stuff to improve what you have. But going back to when the schedule came out, you had to go 2-0 in this. And what we realized this week, this game was going to be harder than we had thought. And we didn't, I had thought that, but once we saw them play, we said, okay. And then the only thing that mattered going into the Eagles, whether it was ugly, whether it was pretty, whatever, we didn't want injuries, obviously. No one wants it. I don't want any of these. There was way too many injuries going on in the NFL. But you just had to fucking win. And they did. And that place is tough. Couldn't you feel the crowd and the place was
Especially
rocking?
early in the game, absolutely.
They take the football seriously there. Penn
And it was
State, it's a big football area, that region.
It was a physical game too, right?
Yeah.
It was a physical game.
Big time.
So, to now, there are things, as we'll talk about, like the schedule. The reason, as you said, you had to be 2-0 is because what you got coming up is Green Bay and Seattle and Arizona. And then you hit a bye and then you got Indy. And so this is why last week I said the Jalen Hurts game, it's kind of a litmus test for you. And he ran the ball. He had 82 rushing yards and a touchdown. So you are going to have
some of those happened in the second half when they were clearly just not trying to give up a touchdown. But still,
Yeah.
he's even when they were playing soft, I felt like he made extra run. Like he's a good runner.
I'll tell you this. I'm going to watch some Philly this year because they're fun.
Yeah. He's an enjoyable player to watch.
He really is. And Devontae and again, they play hard on defense. So, there will be another day probably to talk about the things you got to do better. But as you said, it's just all you had to be was 2-0 in the stretch. And now we've seen this week 1 to week 2, and maybe week 1 and week 2 is where there's the biggest difference. There were a lot of teams in the NFL week 2 that looked nothing like they looked week 1. What are you looking at the TV?
He missed a putt. I didn't know if it was for par or birdie, but either way.
Oh, McNeely?
Yeah.
Not Homa.
Not Homa.
All right. But there's a lot of teams that didn't do the same thing in week 2 that they did in week 1.
He bogeyed.
It's over.
It's over.
It's over.
It's over.
It's over.
I don't even need to see it. I'll see it.
Yeah, you should probably see it.
Yeah.
Wow. What are you going to do with your winnings, you think? Reinvest?
I don't know. Buy crypto? I don't know.
So, anyway, somebody said it was a double bogey.
Oh, yeah. I just saw he went from 18 to 16.
I think the thing, too, about one other point on the identity, Kittle. Like, I don't know, did you see the clip of Kittle running off the field with his shoulder pads and his jersey off?
No.
If you only saw the clip of Kittle racing off the field, you'd have thought George Kittle caught the game-winning touchdown and had 15 catches in the game.
This was after the game, you're saying?
After the game. Like, the way he was celebrating, you would have thought that he had been the hero of the game. And maybe in some ways he was. 4 catches for 17 yards, though it wasn't as a receiver that he might have been the hero of the game. Right? And that goes back to your point on the identity, I think, that everybody is all in on it. And you need part of why George Kittle's so valuable is because he feeds that identity, because he's a big part of the run game. He's a huge part of it.
Yeah. I agree.
And the threat of him existing as a pass catcher is also a major part of it. So I did think watching it too, like if you didn't know anything about either of the two teams and you flipped on the game, who would you have thought? Would it have been obvious who the best players were? You would have thought Debo was one of the best players, right?
Fred Warner was making tackles everywhere.
Fred Warner, yeah.
Bosa.
And Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
Like that's the one. You put out the clip of the Joe Staley interview we did, where Joe did the impression of Nick Bosa saying he gained a step coming back from injury, like when guys gain heat on their fastball. And
After
as you
little
wrote,
TJ.
they're right, or he was right.
Well, I think one thing you noticed today with the Eagles is like Hargraves, who they paid a ton of money in free agency, Sweat, who they just gave, Howie just gave $45 million
40,
to.
yeah, 40, 45.
Yeah, or something like, yeah. And, you know, they had, and Fletcher's older now, but you just feel their presence. And I think last week, you know, it just felt a little more difficult with Kerr, who was getting shoved around, not Steve, but Zach, who was inactive today. And they bring Kinlaw up. They felt bigger inside today. And I felt just Bosa's presence screaming around. He obviously had the big sack. He had the other one. They not give you credit for a sack when the ball fell out of the guy's hands. You know, when he he hit Jalen, ball hits the ground because someone was like, "That's his first sack today." I'm like, I thought he got one earlier, but maybe you don't get one when you hit the guy and the ball comes out. I don't know. I always get confused with some of those rules.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But he sacked I saw him sack the quarterback twice, and he had one last week.
You should give a sack for that.
Yeah, he is just he's an elite player. I mean, he's on pace right now. If that was his second sack of the day and he got the one last week, he'd have 3. But if they just give him 2, that'd be on pace for 17 sacks. And we had been talking all off season like you need a 15-plus sack Nick Bosa season, and then you feel really good because if he's on the field, do we agree here? If he's playing in the games, how does he not end up with 15-plus sacks? Because you'd argue that the guy he just went against, really the last 2 weeks. I know Penei Sewell sucked in practice, but that was at right tackle. Put him at left.
Yeah.
Like, how many teams in the league would take what that guy looked like at left tackle? Like 80% of the league. Then this week he gets the Australian guy who just got $70 million and beat out their first-round pick. I mean, that's, you know, going up against the Packers this week. I'm sure he'll be going up against one of the guy they drafted last year. He's a guard, but they move him out because it's not like Bakhtiari's playing. So you're going to be going up against a non-Bakhtiari player. And then when you go up against, I think you play the Cardinals next. They don't have a great offensive line.
Is it Seattle, then Arizona?
It's Seattle. Okay, Dwayne Brown. So, I mean, but you can play a premium left tackle, and he can still get you a sack. So he's going to have a game when you're playing a team, right, that doesn't have as good of an offensive line. He can get 2 or 3. Like, he could have a massive season. He just can have a massive season. And they need him to because he's their most impactful player on defense. I think Warner, just on a play-in, play-out, just making tackles and stuff, is just their most reliable player. But when you have an elite pass rusher, at any moment, he can just cause a strip sack. He can create a sack on 3rd and long. He can just create crazy shit.
He was, and people are saying in the chat, and they're right, because I checked the box score. He did get that sack, John, so he's got 4 sacks.
4?
Well, I mean, he had 2 in the game.
Gotcha. You have 2 last week?
Oh, no, so he's got 3. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got 3. But, it makes him the second 49ers first-round pick to have 2 sacks today.
Wait, say that again?
He was one of 2 49ers first-round picks to have 2 sacks today. Solomon Thomas also had 2 sacks on Sunday.
Give him his credit.
So, give him his flowers. You gotta give him his flowers. Somebody got mad at me the other day for saying that. Not mad, but they were like, stop trying to use modern lingo. And I said, I'm making fun of it. But you're right.
Would you ever say that on a broadcast?
So the Stony Brook had a guy named Cartel Flowers.
Yeah.
And I thought if he were to get like a pick 6, should I say, Cartel, give him his flowers?
Yes, you should.
I had it in my pocket. I wasn't sure if I'd actually do it.
That'd be pretty good.
I considered it. Go full Chris Berman. But I mean, yeah, it's.
But I also think like today you saw for a second, if this guy can stay healthy, just his body, and you text me, you're like, Jesus, he's huge. He looks massive. And think how much money of defensive linemen there were today on the field. Fletcher Cox has been maxed out multiple times. Sweat just got a contract. Hargraves, they bought him from Pittsburgh. Barnett was a first-round pick I think he got a bad penalty today where he shoved a guy from behind. He was, I think, the 13th pick in the draft. Bosa was a 2nd pick in the draft. Armstead's been paid. Kinlaw's the 14th pick in the draft. D. Ford, who I didn't notice today, is really rich.
He was there.
So there was that game alone. if we just added up the draft value and cash compensation for all the guys, was relatively high. Like, there was a lot of money of defensive linemen. And it's just because there's 7 defensive linemen in that game that every team in the league would want. But Kinlaw, I mean, he blocks a field goal. Like, that's just something, like, that's an added value.
Yes.
And then a couple times you could tell early on, sometimes the running back, like, okay, I can't go there, I got to go there. Where last week it was like, I'm just going to run right down Broadway.
Doesn't the wide 9 feel less wide when Javon Kinlaw's on the field?
Yes.
That's the best way it felt. That's how I would summarize it, is all of a sudden the holes didn't look as wide.
Because they're not.
Last week, the wide 9 looked like it sounds.
Yeah.
Wide open gaps.
Wide open gaps.
You're right. The blocked, this is why.
Well, it's not like he has a 40-inch vertical, so he's just
he said 33.
6'6". He did?
33 is what he said. Yeah. Which is.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
It's insane. I mean, this is how you get drafted in the first round. You look like him, and again, like when he plays.
What was I going to say? 20-inch vert? I mean, he's an SEC top 15 pick.
He does make plays, right?
Yeah.
Like, he makes plays. That the interception return for a touchdown last year against the Rams was just to watch that person make that play is eye-opening.
But isn't it also important? I mean, ideally, you would take like 4 Nick Bosas or 4 TJ Watts or whatever, right? But I do like a little ebb and flow to my guys being different. We talk about this with wide receivers. You want one guy to be a speed guy. You want other guy to be a possession guy. You want everything to kind of balance out. With Nick, like, it's him, Kinlaw right next to him is the perfect, like, that's a good little mix and match. Now, would I take, a great pass rusher next to him? For sure. But, like, if this guy can just be healthy on the field, he's going to be fine. Is he going to be as good as Buckner? Probably not. But can he just play a massive role and just use his talent to be a very, very impactful player? And maybe you could do a deal with him if his knees turn out to be okay and he give you a 7-year career. One of those Roseman you get for way cheaper than you're like, we're going to sign you early, but we're actually not paying you as much as you're really happy you get this money. But if you if Sweat hit free agency, I mean, you'd probably get $58 million instead of 40.
Right.
But it's like they put that money in front of him, and he's like, well, shit, we got 16 games left. Shit, I'll sign it. I like being here. There is something to be said about that.
And I've had, especially if you've had a physical ailments, right? So you go, well, I'll opt for some security here.
Well, think about this, too. So when the team that drafts you plays you and then you excel and then wants to keep you, like, isn't that just like, where else having you and I have been at a place where we were liked and then all of a sudden we weren't? Like, it is good to be places you're liked, right?
Yeah, I was liked. Everything was going fine. I'm kidding.
You weren't liked, but they were cool with keeping you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was liked more than I should have been. Maybe not. Maybe I was hated. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. It really was bizarre. Because there were a couple times when it was like, if I was the person on the opposite, I would like me way more than him. Yet when the dust settled, like, it felt like you got a pass on some of the shit.
Yeah. I was very sneaky distance.
It might have just been a simple body count, like they didn't have a choice. They needed to.
The heads needed the roll. P-Tac on YouTube says Bosa is the best NFL defensive player. I mean, he might be. He could be the defensive player of the year. This would not be, and that's the thing with him, right? Is if he plays a full season, then every full season he plays, he's going to have a chance to be the defensive player of the year in the NFL.
I did a elite white guy poll and threw it out there to a couple people last week. Who would you rather have, TJ Watt or the Bosa brothers?
Or Max Crosby?
I didn't include him. Who, we got a DM today from a guy, diehard Raider fan, talking shit. Also threw in, if you watch the videos through, Max didn't have his best day today. Was irrelevant.
Video was something.
Video was incredible. Joey, was that his name? It was
Joey.
funny.
Yeah, Joey sent us a video. It was like 7 parts, and he was
Yeah.
he was pacing in circles the whole time, drunk, yelling at us, and I got dizzy watching it.
It's clearly in Pennsylvania. He had the accent, but he's a Raider guy. Maybe Delaware, somewhere in that kind of region.
Probably not Delaware. Nobody lives in Delaware.
I could feel the accent though, and multiple people responded back. Watt. I don't watch Watt that much. I just know he's sweet. I mean, clearly they just gave him a ton of money. I mean, he's good. But everyone said that they would take the Bosa brothers over Watt. Now, I mean, we're nitpicking. It's like, would you rather have Mahomes, Rodgers? I mean, these are the best, right?
Yeah.
3 of the best guys, edge rushers
Yeah.
in the league. But
TJ Watt got hurt today.
yeah, hurt his groin.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But, I mean, look, I think we've talked about this from a quarterback standpoint a ton. The reason you the reason you chase a top 5 quarterback is because they just elevate everybody else. When as things go on, your team gets more expensive, whatever, you're not drafting as high. So maybe in theory, there's less talent. Same applies to your defensive players. Same applies to Nick Bosa. Like, he makes Javon Kinlaw better. Javon Kinlaw makes him better. Your good players help your other good players live up to the money that they're getting paid or their draft position.
Well, and sometimes, right, like think of how the Niners acquired, Trent Williams in addition, but in the draft, their 2 best draft picks so far, Fred Warner and George Kittle. Let's face it, they got a little lucky, right? If everyone knew how good Fred Warner was going to be, what's he, a top 10 pick in that draft? If we redid it, for sure. If we redid Kittle's draft, we'd have to dive into it. Then I would highly doubt he makes it out of the top 10. They got in the 3rd and the 5th round. When you actually pull the trigger on a top 5 guy, like you are looking for Nick or Joey Bosa, right? Because we've seen it. It's when Solomon Thomas and Cleveland Farrell, those guys, when they drafted the Raiders and the Niners, took those 2 guys. Maybe they didn't think maybe they could be a Bosa brother, but they thought they could be a very impactful player. They would not have pulled the trigger, right? So there is a crazy, you get this weird like credit when you hit on a guy past like the top 50 picks and he becomes a Pro Bowler, super extended guy. But you get a lot of shit because it's just required. Like when you take him number 2 overall, you don't really get, that's what he was supposed to be, right?
Yeah, but I would say even most top 5 picks don't have the upside that Nick Bosa has. Like sometimes you're just drafting, sometimes the draft just doesn't have Nick Bosa in it, right?
I would agree, but the way he was talked about, people thought he was going to be a star.
Right, but I'm just saying back to your point on luck, like sometimes you're drafting 2nd or 3rd and that guy doesn't exist in the draft. Sometimes you need a quarterback and there's not a great quarterback in the draft. That guy doesn't exist in every draft.
Well, wouldn't you say that Lawrence was just luck, right? That's how what everyone thought. It's clearly he's not as good coming out of college as Andrew Luck. I mean, honestly, it might not even be close. Now, could they be equivalent of prospects? Potentially. Size, athleticism, accuracy. I looked today, he threw for 118 yards. Yeah. Like and it might not be all of his fault. You'd be like, well, he plays on a shitty team. Luck's head coach was Chuck Pagano, and his general manager was Ryan Grigson, and he won 11 games. So, listen, if you put a 22 or 23-year-old Andrew Luck on the Texans or the Jaguars, are they good? Probably not, but they're better with him than they would be with Trevor Lawrence. So every prospect is different that way.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, should we jump on?
Unveil it, baby.
All right, everybody. We are there are a lot of you out there, a lot of our listeners doing cool shit because sometimes you tell us what you're up to, which we like to hear. That's not even doesn't have to be you using one of our products. Sometimes you just show us what you're up to, and we love it. And this is speaking of listeners doing cool shit. We are thrilled to have as a sponsor on the podcast starting this week a restaurant owned by some Niner fans, and they've got multiple Bay Area locations. They got multiple California locations. They've got 2 locations in Levi Stadium, everybody. Let's welcome Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen and Bar to the show. How about some of what they got? So if you're listening, we'll tell you about it. If you're watching, you can see some of what they got. You and I are going to get the special treatment here very soon. But Eric and Alex, the Adler brothers, we've talked to them over the last month or so. And they've got Puesto. They opened it in 2012 in La Jolla, first-generation Mexican-American family. And they started growing and growing and growing. And they've got incredible taco selection. The margaritas, they've got, 500 tequilas, they told us. And they've got restaurants in Levi Stadium. They got 2, Section 110 and Section 129. So if you're in the Bay Area, or they've got a location in Santa Clara. I should probably run into some Niners there. I'm just saying. Yeah. Or in Concord. And it's just some of the best-looking Mexican food you'll ever see.
Well, Guy, how about
tasting,
this?
For that matter,
the way we're going to try to get to Concord one this week. The crispy melted cheese on their tacos. So when you are here's what we need you to do. The Niners game this week, if you're listening and you're going, hit up one of their taco stands in 110 or 129, and when you get a Puesto taco, take a picture of the Puesto taco.
Or the margarita.
Take us a picture.
The bang bang margarita, John.
And the Baja fish taco, Puesta beer battered, local 9 cod fish, shredded cabbage, classic guacamole. The tacos look fantastic. I can't wait to have about 10 of them. I can't. You have to do it. Puesto, fired up to have them around. They are in Levi Stadium. They're, like Guy said, Santa Clara, Concord, all Southern California, in the sweetest places, San Diego, La
LA.
Jolla.
Yeah.
So
They have 7 locations down there, so.
Doesn't suck.
No, it doesn't suck. Do you know those areas? Is that what you're saying? No.
Well, yeah,
It
I've
doesn't
been there. Driven in and out. I'd never get to stay because I'm not cool enough. But next time I need to.
Let's try this out here now. The tortillas are made in-house daily from scratch. I mean, look at these. From scratch, featuring organic, non-GMO masa from Macienda, the best you can find on the market. There's another Spanish word I was going to try. I don't know. Margaritas?
They look
Puesto?
bomb.
Huh?
They look
They
good.
look fantastic. So I like the quesabirria taco. Crispy melted cheese. Did you mention this one, the braised short rib?
I don't think I did. No,
Is it Jalisco or Jalisco?
I would
Salsa?
call it Jalisco.
Jalisco, pickled radish, classic guacamole.
Looks bomb.
This looks so good. The cheese. Oh my God, the cheese on the flat grill.
If you're watching this on YouTube right now, it's just an incredible video on their website, Puesto.
Puesto,
Fantastic.
Puesto. So go check it out. One of the 9 locations, 2 in the Bay Area, or if you're going to the Niner game, section 110, section 129. It is awesome to have them on the podcast. It's great to have them as listeners, and they are just killing it. I mean, they have been on National Geographic, Michelin Guide, Food Network. Everyone has featured their food, and so it's an honor to have them. It's an honor to eat it. We hope you do too, and send us pictures of you eating some Puesto this Sunday.
Do it.
That's Sunday night, isn't it?
Sunday night football, guy. Sunday night football.
Bum, bum,
Packers,
bum, bum.
Niners.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. All right, John. Podcast is also brought to you by DraftKings. Promo code HAM. I say it like that because I didn't think I could finish lower in our DraftKings game than I did last week. I think in the 190 range. I'm in the 190s again today, Sunday, but don't let that stop you. I guess it should actually inspire you to come take my money. DraftKings, promo code HAM when you sign up.
Yeah, I don't even think I'm close, but here's the key. Go to the App Store, get the DraftKings app if you haven't already, download the DraftKings app. Use the promo code HAM when you do. Then you can get in our game. We play in every week, 200 people in our fantasy games. It's simple. You just get your lineup under the salary cap. If you don't want to be like me and Guy and put a bad team together, you want to put good players that are going to make sweet plays and score you points on the weekend, and then you can win money because it's really easy. The winner in our game wins $450. $450. You put in 10, you win $450. It's sweet. Download the DraftKings app now. Use the code HAM this week. New customers can get a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. Enter code HAM to get a free shot at millions in total prizes with your first deposit. That's code HAM only at DraftKings, the official daily fantasy partner of the National Football League. No big deal. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details.
That's right. I tried to make my lineup last night in the Saturday night in the state of Oregon. That's a no-fly zone, apparently.
Yeah, no fly zone.
So I put it together and then had to re-put it together this morning, and I would have been better off just not even being in the game. I think it was the link to our DraftKings league is in this YouTube video or in the podcast. If you have any trouble, some people do, just send us the DM. We'll get you straightened out. If we don't respond to you in a couple days, call the Better Business Bureau and report us. But customer service. But no, we'll try to. So just hit us up again. Don't be afraid because we want to make sure you get in our game. When you're in our league, then you get the first invite when the game goes out. Back-to-back weeks, we've done 200 people, and so we're going to keep it rolling because it's a great time. Should we announce real quick here before we move on to some other topics? Let's just give love to whoever won this week, who won the first place prize. Because I saw somebody left a message on Twitter, and they were in third place. Peter Chu. Looks like Peter Chu was our winner this week, John. Peter Chu had Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback. Wait a second. Somebody with Tyrod just won the thing?
Who else did he have?
He had Derrick Henry, who got him a cool 51 points
Oh my God.
and only had 7% ownership this week in our DraftKings game.
That's a good pickup. That's a good pickup, bro.
50. I have not seen. He had Tyler Lockett that got him 35 points. He had Cortland Sutton
Had a
got
big game.
28 points.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler got him 22.5. Noah Fant in the Niners defense. And then Elijah Mitchell, who doesn't have a headshot.
I did not know that Derrick Henry he had 35 carries for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. And unlike Henry, he had 6 catches for 55 yards. That's a fantasy day. Don't sleep on Henry.
God.
Derrick Henry is good enough to even make Todd Downing look good.
On the road, too. Peter Chu, congratulations. Peter won $450 in our DraftKings game this week. The top 10 all made money. And so congrats to the rest of you guys in there as well who got it on the act. We're happy to see somebody win some money.
Yeah.
We're happy to see somebody win some money.
Max Homa, he won today, too.
And and how about, Max Homa? It's not even DraftKings, but holy hell.
Yes.
Middlecoff.
I'm telling you, if you guys want to win money like me and Guy did, like myself did, mybookie.ag, promo code AM1.
That deserves a double ad for them on the podcast today. That's pretty. Is this how would you rank this as your greatest gambling?
Yeah, in 24 hours, I've never won $5,600. Maybe in Vegas, like at a table, but usually the money goes back, right?
Yeah.
I bet the most I've ever won in a table, probably similar, 5 to 10 grand range. But you kind of, if you're not leaving right away, you can respend it.
So this is as hot. This is as productive as you've ever had a 2-day stretch.
Given how much I put in, $150. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's the best I've ever done.
The profit margin.
It's been the greatest 24-hour stretch in John Middlecoff's gambling history. Now, there have been lows.
Longest story history.
Yeah, there's been a lot of misses, but
you had the 9-7 Giants beating in what 13 points. What was that spread in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, factor in inflation, modern day America. That's $1,500 in 2007.
But here's the thing: these were all money line bets. This was Homa to win, Fresno State parlay to win, Oklahoma State to beat Boise to win, BYU to beat ASU.
Yeah.
This is right after you said last week you don't do parlays, or 2 weeks ago. Remember that? It's like parlays. It's so stupid.
I got bored.
But you just got these numbers that were outrageous, right?
Yeah, I did.
Let's give it up. Let's give it up for Johnny Boy. All right. Okay. Before we get to Derek Carr MVP conversation, how about Trey Lance DNP? Did not play. We spent a lot of time. I don't know if you remember this. A lot of time figuring out whether or not Trey Lance would play, how much Trey Lance would play. He played in the opener. Did not play against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 2. Didn't even feel like we were close to seeing him play. Didn't feel like there was about to be something which featured him. What did you make of that?
A little surprising. We didn't see him at all. Now, once they kind of got down, and again, it was 3-0, but it just felt like, God damn, this thing is tight. And I just wonder if Kyle felt comfortable putting a rookie quarterback in that environment with that defensive line. I felt like the game and the intensity of it dictated a little bit. But you'd say, well, they play the Packers next week. Is he just not going to play much moving forward? And for the first time, I thought, yeah, we just might not see him for a little while. Maybe he doesn't think he's close to being ready as he thought he would be 3 weeks ago. Maybe he just feels that the ebb and flow of a game, I can't run him in and out. I don't know. But my number one takeaway when he didn't come in the first half, I was like, yeah, Kyle didn't feel comfortable putting a rookie quarterback in that environment. That was my take. And then I'm sure there's other stuff at play, but just it felt really physical. It felt like you could get destroyed. Now, being the backup quarterback, you are a couple times Jimmy did a couple dives into traffic. It's like, whoa, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And if he gets a stinger or something, when you are the backup quarterback, you are one snap away from going in. So he is playable, right? If something goes wrong. But Kyle clearly, to me, it triggered in his head early on, like, I don't feel comfortable playing him in this game.
Yeah, I think that what became clear, especially by halftime, when he'd already made the decision for half of the game not to play him. But by halftime, it became, I think, a little bit clear when you're up 7-3 that you can lose this game right? You can actively lose that game as opposed to keep doing what you're doing, and the recipe is going to be pretty simple here to win it. Just don't do anything to lose it. It's why when Garoppolo I guess that was in the first half that he threw that ball over the middle way too high and almost got picked. You went, what? Oh. If that ball had been thrown in the second half, it would have felt even more scary because
when he didn't bring him in after his couple wayward passes, then what's he going to bring him in for?
Yeah, although I think that'd be a weird spot to bring him in. You bring him in that spot, it's like, well, are you trying to replace as opposed to here's a package for him? I also think that, and we've talked about this a lot, and you hear coaches talk about, they put together their script, but you don't always get to the script. These play calls, down and distance, position on the field, who's available from a personnel standpoint, right? You've got a couple of injuries, how the other team is playing. It's easy to look at a game ahead of time and go, all right, you're going to run whatever it is, 70 plays on offense today. So, it shouldn't be that hard to get. They ran 68. It shouldn't be that hard to get 4 plays to Trey Lance. But of those 68 offensive plays, right, how many of them are punts? How many of them are third and longs? How many of them are first downs? How many of them are in your own 25-yard line? It's just you start whittling down the area where you'd want them to play, and you don't have a lot left at the end of it. And I think you're right. Maybe from an environment standpoint, I think it became pretty clear, like, don't do anything too weird today, and you should win this football game. Don't try and today's not the day to try and outsmart anybody.
You think it's a week-to-week thing then? So you think coming into Green Bay that it all is on the table?
I think
you expect he could flow back in?
I think so.
Different at home, too. Different at home.
I think so.
Being at home is a more conducive environment to being relaxed a little bit, right? Or at least the crowd's on your side.
Right. But also, I think if we look up and that game is, 21-17 at halftime, it's like, we might need to try some other stuff. We might just need to mix it up and try and be a little more creative.
You're saying the Packer game.
Yeah, the Eagles game was not about creativity. That's not what that game was about.
No.
That game was about bronze over brain. I mean, brain's a part of it, but that's what that was.
Well, yeah, I think the good example going back is Sirianni's got to be kicking himself for overthinking that goal line stretch. And Kyle did not do an overthink. He went consistently short yardage stuff. He did quarterback sneaks. He just slammed the ball. You're right. I didn't really think about that, but it wasn't worth him coming in and making a mistake. If you were going to make a mistake, I'll make the mistake with Jimmy Garoppolo, who I am way more comfortable with in this environment because I've been in this environment before with him. With Trey, in a game that is 7, but at one point in time it was 3-0, but it just felt like fuck. One bad fumble, pick six, this game would be over. I can't afford to have a zone read, hits off Elijah Mitchell's chest because he freaks out because Fletcher Cox lights up Brunskill. It might have just been as simple as that. Like, this was just, if we got to 10 points, we might win it. And really, they would have won it at 10 points until the Eagles got that last kind of late touchdown. They went for 2 and made it 11, right?
Yeah, which early warning on the Niners' backdoor cover situation this year could be something to be on high alert for if you start picking the Niners to cover. You got to watch all 4 quarters.
I just don't think they're as likely, probably, with Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback. They're not going to be blowing good teams out even when they're playing well.
Yeah. So I think you just hit on something about why it's such a tightrope for Kyle Shanahan to walk with Trey Lance, which is that, and we said this before the year too, it's a real tightrope to walk with Lance because when you let a guy be the starting quarterback, you're not thinking about whether or not he makes a mistake. What are you going to do? Or how is he going to react? You're going to let him throw a pick, a second pick, a third pick, whatever. My starting quarterback is just my starting quarterback, right? When you have a clear-cut starting quarterback.
You just talking to Robert Saleh before you hopped on here?
What do you mean?
Well, his guy threw about 7 picks today.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, and another pick. But it's a fine line with Trey because if you're only going to have 4 plays or 5 plays or 3 plays, what happens if he fumbles on the second play? Ideally, your guy makes a mistake, he gets right back on the field and is able to respond to it. If it's Trey Lance, that play he fumbles on might have been the last play he was going to run today, whether he scored a 70-yard touchdown, fumbled the ball, or did something in the middle. Yeah. And so you kind of get in this awkward spot where when you're manipulating every opportunity that a player has, you're at risk of over manipulating it, as opposed to just saying, you're the guy, some random shit's going to happen today. Some of it'll be good, some of it'll be bad, but you're the guy. Just go be the guy. Right. And it goes back to my analogy of when you're in stop and go traffic and you're changing lanes all the time. Yeah, sometimes it works out. Sometimes you end up back where you started. Sometimes it's worse off.
I feel a lot of times it's worse off.
I think so too. And I think that goes back to just as human beings, we think that if we controlled every aspect of everything, we could make something work out better than random luck. Like your parlay yesterday. You weren't even going to do it had it not closed off on Central Michigan LSU. Now, were you lucky? Well, you had some luck, but you also had the experience of understanding where the value was, right? And you made the picks. And I think this is part of it. Like it's when you're only going to give a guy a shot here or a shot there, the highs could be high, but the lows could be low. And, I'm not saying that's why he didn't play today, that he's thinking of it like that. I'm just saying this is going to be part of the deal where one day he might not play. One day he might get 4 snaps and have 2 touchdowns. And you'll go, this guy needs to play more. One day he might get 3 snaps, get no yards on 2 of them, and throw a pick. And you go, oh, my God, now Trey Lance has got to sit on that for a week? That's going to suck.
Well, think about it as simple as this. In the last 2 decades, right, as in the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady era of football, there has really been one coach that has done it, and it stood out, and he took a lot of shit for it, and that was Sean Payton. And it's really just happened in the last 4 or 5 years with Taysom Hill. No one does this. Even if your quarterback's bad, you just eventually bench him and go with the other guy, but you just play the one guy. Then all of a sudden this year, it was like Kyle was going to do it. And you and I know I was cool, whatever. It was kind of interesting.
Yes.
But the old saying is correct because it's tried and true. Like, you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. And I do think Kyle, he's still going to, put plays in, I'm sure. John Gruden, who obviously Derek at this point in time is much better than Jimmy. But the second play of whatever Monday Night Football or that first series, might have been the second series, I don't even remember, but Marcus Mariota came in. Somehow he got a concussion and he hurt his quad on the same play. It kind of feels like Mariota's kind of made it last, but you and I are rooting for the guy. But, it's one that was just, okay, he's doing that on purpose with one guy. It felt like Trey Lance, they were trying to balance it with him and Jimmy, and maybe Kyle just scrapped that after when he didn't like it. Maybe it's as simple as that. Now, he's not going to publicly say that. And I think Nagy really pushed against it. Now, we'll find out what Andy Dalton's injury is, but I think ideally, going back to the guy that started this, and everyone's trying to copy kinda, but it's harder to copy because there's way more pressure. Andy didn't do any of this shit. He just said, hey guys, Alex our starter, over and over. And then Alex just started playing, had the best season of his career, and he didn't really need to answer to it. Yeah. But Patrick never came in, beside like maybe a couple times in blowouts. But then he just got his own game. You know why? Because it's easier to run your team with one guy. And even Kyle mentioned it with Jalen Hurts this week. I was watching maybe his Friday press conference. He's like, yeah, our guy was over with the scout team, as in Trey, being Jalen Hurts, right? So what does that mean? Well, he's not next to Jimmy and McGlinchey and Trent Williams and all those guys, right? He's over with those guys. Yeah. So maybe it's just as simple as that. When they play a mobile quarterback, he's not really going to get his reps. When they play Aaron Rodgers, like they could, I guess you probably ideally wouldn't do this, but Sudfeld technically could do it, right? Definitely some of the other pocket quarterbacks.
But he doesn't necessarily. But also, you could say, here's his package of 8 plays that we might run. Right? He doesn't need to have everything available to him. But he is your backup quarterback.
Yeah, I know. But part of the deal with where I think people don't understand, I had someone DM me this. And listen, I understood the question because they go, I heard about all these long days. I hear it all the time when I listen to you guys or whoever talk about football, players and coaches. Like, could you explain to me a day? Like, when you say long day, like, what are their days? And I'm like, well, I mean, a player's day is basically from 6:30 to 7, depending on workouts, till, after dinner. And you're either in the meeting room, you're on the field, or you're working out or eating. I mean, and they're all kind of run together. Now, coaches are longer, but once you're on the practice field, if you've never been to a college or an NFL practice, it's very segmented. But I talked to a buddy last week, and I asked him, I said, you go out to practice during the season? He said, yeah, I do. He's like, I like practices during the season much more. He's like, underrated. They're actually a little more competitive than I think the average person would realize. Because you see the training camp, everyone's fighting for a job, and then once you get in, he's like, it's pretty aggressive out there. But it's all just on the opponent, right? It's not like you're just working on us. You do during individual drills, but once you get past like the individual drills where every position does their own, like their steps or their feet or their catching drill, whatever the individual position groups. Once you go to groups, like the wide receiver get with the quarterback, the linebackers, the DBs get together, then your only thing you're talking about is the opponent. So if you have Trey and I need to simulate stuff, he just has to go with the defense. So he just is going to miss a lot of time. And the backup quarterback, you hear offensive coordinators, you hear starting quarterbacks, you hear head coaches talk about this about all the time. They just really don't get that many reps just to begin with. And part of it, if you don't have 3 quarterbacks, that guy has to go service the defense. And in this situation this week, I'm sure they just spent a lot of time because Jalen was pretty dynamic as a mover. You would just want him over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, guy, he might not have got one first-team rep all week, just the way it played out, right?
See, I tend to think that they intended to use him and the game just didn't dictate it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, potentially just the way maybe a practice worked out, they just like, we don't really have time, in this situation because we
at
need
the Greenbrier
service. Yeah, at the Greenbrier. I love how much credit on social media. Jed didn't have to do this. It's like, well, I would understand, like if you own a restaurant and your margins, even if you're doing pretty well, let's say you're making a couple $100,000 or $800, $1 million net, right, throughout the year. So, you break that down through the month. If you do something big, invest $100,000 of that $1 million into something, especially if you're like, I hope this works, I hope it doesn't, but that's impressive. Jed just giving, I guess it was $1 million for the Greenbrier. Like, you guys do understand, like, all this NFL, I'm not giving Jed credit, but I'm not acting like that money came out of, like, his personal savings. And listen, we run a business. He's just doing what he's supposed to be doing. If that's where they want to practice, it's functional. But let's not act like it was that big. He gave us the $1 million. He gave us the go-ahead. Like, I hope he did. Like, they have a fucking unlimited amount of money. If he didn't, I would call him really cheap.
Right.
It's a pretty basic
If
move.
Kyle Shanahan said, this is what we need, and he said, nah, I'm going to need you guys to come home to save money. Your NFL team starts doing, now, salary cap is one thing, but they start doing other things to save money, you've got a problem. Right?
So
if they don't hire the best coach available to save money, that's
I guess
problem.
my point here is
I'm saying
Jed,
non-football salary stuff.
That gets you criticized, but you don't get credit when you just.
Well, you know what I love to say? It's the price of admission, and not everybody in the NFL, not every owner in the NFL operates that way. But if you say we want to be a championship team, then you do things like that.
And he does, and no one's ever questions Jed's spending. But the Niners have a ton of money.
No, he's paid a lot of coaches, in fact.
Yeah, yes.
Right? And you kind of get credit for that, too, for not holding on to a coach because it's going to be expensive to fire him.
Well, I'll give you an example. I heard this weekend that the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, Gannon, that skinny guy with the jawline, looks the part, had 6 or 7 defensive coordinator job offers this offseason.
Wow.
So he could have been a defensive coordinator at countless places. Now, if you had to do the math, some of those I'm sure would have been like Robert Saleh. Let's say he offered him. He wouldn't have been the coordinator. Actually, he would have there, right? Because Robert's not calling it. Well, what does that tell you? I mean, the Eagles paid him the most, right? But that's what you should do. Like, if this is the guy your coach wants,
not that they blocked him. Oh, I guess he was not on their
No,
staff.
they hired him to go with Sirianni. Now, he was with Sirianni with the Colts, but he was clearly, people wanted him. Obviously, Nick wanted him badly. He'd been around him. But they clearly probably paid him, he's probably making like $3 million. It's good to have options.
I'm looking right now, John, as we speak. Actually, before we get to that, one other thing, hold on, before we jump ahead, because we got a good comment here. This is from Jacob Baker, full name on the internet. It looks like he said so many QBs hurt today. Who was picking up the phone for Jimmy? I mean, Tyrod got hurt, Tua got hurt, Andy Dalton got hurt,
Wentz
got hurt. We know Fitz is hurt.
Baker, it looked like hurt a shoulder bad, but then he came back in the game. It was fine. But the way
Carr got hurt for a second. You're right.
Did you see the highlight on Baker when he was holding his shoulder? I went, clavicle. Because he threw a pick. And I didn't see the replay, but he clearly got, the pick was 30 yards down the field, but the guy made his way past the line of scrimmage. So then Baker kind of was just in the vicinity of the commotion. And there was just a lot of collateral damage, and he was the last guy to get up, and he was holding his non-throwing shoulder, and I just thought, did he just break his clavicle? But then he came back. Same with Gar. You're like, did he break his foot? And you're like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah. He did get hit kind of funny, so I understood it. Kind of got freaked out a little bit, but
Jimmy's
I
untradeable
think,
if you're not willing to play Trey Lance.
yeah, that's the crazy thing is, right? Like, to me, we don't know as we record this what the Carson situation is. Indianapolis made a ton of sense before. They make a ton of sense now. Their quarterback, he's not good enough if Wentz is going to be out to win football games for them. And now their problem is, now the Colts' problem is that they're kind of behind the eight ball because they're 0-2, right? So can they afford for Carson? Now they've lost 2 games with Carson, although the second game he didn't play the whole game. But can they afford to make Jacob Eason their quarterback, even if Wentz is only going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks? Or are they going to have to go get Nick Foles or something? Well, I don't know, but Jimmy's not an option right now. The other night, Thursday, was it Thursday? Yeah, the Giants Washington football team game. You texted me like, how did you phrase it? Would you rather have pick 39 or Saquon Barkley for Jimmy? And I said, well, pick 39. Of course. Would Saquon, because the question is this, would Saquon get you, if you said Saquon's available, would somebody who had the 39th pick trade you the 39th pick for him? I don't think so.
Well, because he's now, he's close to getting extended. He's already been hurt. Like he's actually kind of got some red flags on him. Sad because he was.
I know he was the college game day picker. Did you see that?
I know.
And I was talking. Joe Moorhead, who's the offensive coordinator for Oregon, coached him at Penn State. And I asked him, I'm like, do you guys ask you about Saquon? Like, he's like, when we install the offense, it's a bunch of Saquon tape. So like we talk about it then. He goes, the thing about Saquon. Yes, he's a generational talent, but that's not even the best thing about him. He's an incredible teammate and an unbelievable leader. Like, fuck yeah. And then I saw him on game day. Like, God, this guy is cool.
Well, because I had the thought, how the Florida State offensive lineman 2 weeks ago, who was just all in on his proposal, both families were in town, and he did it anyway with them celebrating in the back.
Jackson State.
And it was it's one of those, you're all in. Do you have to pivot? Now, he's not a starter. I'd say if you're a starter, I don't know if you could pull that off. He was a backup.
I support it. I support it. And I'll tell you why I support it. Because at the end of the game is over and your life goes on. And it doesn't mean that you didn't work. If you propose to your girlfriend after you lost a football game in a heartbreaking fashion, it doesn't mean that like you're not a hard worker or you don't care about losing a football game.
I think it would have been a tough one at a program like that for a starter to do. He was a backup, so I'm with you.
It would have been. I agree. It would have been tough, but it also, I don't know, man. I don't think there's anything wrong with being able to.
But I think he clearly picked that game for a reason, right? Because he knew it was going to be a win.
Or maybe just because everyone was going to be there.
No,
like maybe he didn't want to wait.
I think you pick it for a reason because you just know it's full.
Pick what? There wasn't even like a fireworks or anything.
No, to me, he picked the game for a reason because you would not do it at the shittiest game. You would do it at a better game, but it's too risky. You might lose.
What I'm saying is, what plan would he have had to bump back? Just the travel, everybody there?
Yeah, and just pivot.
Okay. But I'm saying, so it's not like he had a stealth fighter that he couldn't cancel.
But I guess, so again, my take was going to be on Saquon. He just lost. Yeah. He's 0-2. Should he be a college game day? And I was like, I'm too big of a stiff.
Yeah, he had already scheduled that because it was his free weekend, right? And it was at Penn State, and go stand up for your alma mater. But I'm with you. You can't. The Niners can't do that right now.
Well, guy, they're already 2-0. You can't trade. Like if you traded him, even if you got, let's say, someone super desperate, and I'm not saying he's worth a first-round pick, but let's say some team would give you a first-round pick. You could be like, that's too good of a value. What if Trey Lance is not even close to being ready and you go 7-10? That'd be a problem.
Yeah.
For several reasons, right? Did you pick the wrong guy? Gave up all these picks. You could have kept winning with Jimmy. The fuck, you already had him on the books. What was the point? You could overthink it. I just think he's on the team now for a while.
Yeah, I agree. Al says Indy will trade for Nick Foles. And when you texted that to me, I took it to me that's more of an off-season conversation. I know you were kidding, and I put up a poll and I said, and more people said they would want Saquon than a second-round pick, which I thought was nuts. And then some people said, I'm saving this tweet for when Jimmy balls out. I'm going to show you wanted him traded. I'm like, that's not what this is about. This is about Saquon. But whatever. The internet's for fun, and I had fun with it. So you got me thinking on that one. So well done. Okay. Derek Carr. Balling. Here are his numbers from the road win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 28-37. I'm going to do some quick math. That's 76% completion. 382 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I think what's really significant, Henry Ruggs had the best game of his career. Career high 5 catches for 113. And had the most targets on the team. Tied for the most targets on the team was 7. So it was, to me, part of Ruggs, when we talk about Carr, is like what you dreamed of when you got him. You saw it today, and it worked in a win.
Two bombs back-to-back weeks, right?
That's right. Yeah.
2 explosive bombs with an explosive player. Today was a little sweeter because he scored a touchdown. And listen, yards, it's like money. It's inflated now. But he's averaging over 400 yards a game. I mean, I know it was overtime in the other game, but he's thrown for 817 yards. And I think whenever I'm just looking up, he's got knocked for years for playing like Alex Smith. And you and I, who are just so much closer to it, I think, than the national conversation, because outside of Derek and Fresno State and people watching him even closely with the Raiders, nationally they kind of come in and be like, oh yeah, he plays like Alex. Like, his skill set, Alex had to play like Alex. He couldn't throw the ball down the field. It's like, why can't Drew Brees doesn't have the arm anymore? He can't throw the ball down the field. Part of Derek Carr, like you're watching Herbert today, he can make these throws that 10 guys in the league can make. The throw he made to Ruggs today, even the throw he made to Ruggs last week, the little lollipop one that probably flew 45 yards in the air, Alex couldn't do that on his greatest day of his career. The one Derek threw today, no chance. You see how far that ball went? There were multiple DBs. Like Derek's arm, like Jimmy Garoppolo. Derek has a much better arm than Jimmy Garoppolo. Like Derek has an explosive arm. And I think the question was, after he got hurt, could he play comfortable and confident in the pocket, right? And use that arm to his advantage. And maybe this was the mindset with Gruden. Part of getting Henry Ruggs, remember when they acquired Ted Ginn and some of the guys with Alex, it's like, it doesn't work. Like, it's not, Tyreek Hill, think how much better Tyreek has just been with Mahomes. Why? Because he can utilize him down the field. Like, part of Ruggs, he should work with Derek.
Right.
Now,
and part of Ruggs is he's better off on a team with a quarterback like Derek Carr. Right. He could have ended up on a team like if he's on the Vikings. Well, I guess the Vikings actually do hit some bombs. But if he's on most quarterbacks can't do what Derek does.
Now, this podcast has talked about the CeeDee Lamb historically is the type guy that he has a lot of success with. And that's true. Like, I think CeeDee is very similar.
Big targets. Yeah.
Big target, contested catches, Keenan Allen type guy, Devontae Adams, who he played with in college. Crabtree resurrected his career. But Derek can make the throws to Ruggs. You just got to call him. And Derek has to be comfortable with looking his way, which he was not last year, right? That was kind of a knock. Is Derek comfortable with Henry? I think they look pretty comfortable right now.
Felt like more of a Ruggs issue last year.
But Derek didn't throw it his way. So, yeah, right, it might have been Ruggs not knowing where to go.
Yeah. I think part of deep ball accuracy is who are you throwing it to, and can that person make catches, right? Like, how much is Russell Wilson, who throws, some people think, maybe the best deep ball in NFL history, aided by the fact that DK Metcalf can run like the wind, and Tyler Lockett is like Willie Mays out there, right? It doesn't have to be a perfect throw for those guys. Yeah. So, it's similar with Ruggs. Like, the question is with Ruggs, like, can he elevate Derek? And right now you're saying Derek is the key to the whole thing, but Ruggs is, and we saw it in flashes last year, but now it feels like it's consistent. When you get that consistently, like, then when you're getting Deshaun Jackson consistently, right? Now you're doing things that most people in the NFL can't do. And they're winning. They're 2-0.
You see the touchdown he threw to Edwards in the back of the end zone? Edwards looks sweet. So you got Edwards who is the opposite body type of Ruggs, and a little bit he's going to be more of a physical guy. And then you have Waller as well. Like, those are three potent weapons. Now I think the question mark for them to be to truly make the playoffs, because they're going to be, their defense is, I think, a little overachieving, but it's clear they're way better than they've been. But they're going to rely on their star quarterback and the offensive weapons. Like, they need to figure out a way to get Josh Jacobs in the big games, because he is a big-time player. So, like, when they play the Chiefs, as these games go down and they're fighting for playoff seeding, he didn't play today. Now, they paid Kenyon Drake, who I like Kenyon Drake. Put him on my fantasy team today. I don't think he did that much. But if you can get Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake with those guys, if Derek's going to play like this, You'd say the MVP probably through 2 weeks. I think Kyler has 8 touchdowns. And he's, if it ended after 2 weeks, he'd be hard to trump. I just think statistically he's been fucking remarkable. But Derek is going to be, I'm more confident on Derek sustaining. Kyler better than last year, but he starts really fast. Can he sustain it? That would be my question. Derek can just, it's not going to be as fast paced as Kyler, even though I do think Derek can throw 4 and 5 touchdown games, but it's just not going to be quite as sexy just because Kyler is like, I don't know what, the modern day Michael Vick. It's remarkable watching him run around and do what he's doing. It's unreal.
I kind of think Derek's deep ball looks like Michael Vick's a little bit.
Derek's
It's a very sharp deep ball, piercing like Vick's. But Michael Vick threw my favorite deep ball.
But he picks between. Like Derek has that ball that he threw to Ruggs, but he also has the Russell lollipop.
Right.
Which I think sometimes when he's not confident, which he hasn't been before when John first got here, or at least was trying to find his confidence, sometimes I feel like he gets lost between the throw. And right now, last week, when he threw it to Ruggs against the Ravens, perfectly timed for the lollipop. Perfectly timed. Threw it to that area. They clearly worked on it. Today with Ruggs, perfectly timed. Just whip it out and show how big your arm is and fucking hit him in stride and he'll walk in the end zone.
Which Derek loves to do.
100%.
That's the other thing. To your point, when we talk about like Derek the check down, we've seen it.
He did get called that, didn't he? Like that wasn't like it was.
But that's not his person. He does want to air it out. He did it in college with Devontae Adams a lot, and not just Devontae actually, but he did it a lot in college. He wants to show his arm off. Which why wouldn't you? Everybody, if you had that arm, you would want to do it too. So that's what always was weird to me about, kind of that conversation around him. Now he's got the weapon to do it. And I think now they're 2-0. I mean, I know they're 2-0, but I think now you look at their schedule, and we talked about last week, they could have the most impressive 2-0 in the NFL. Now they got Miami, their situation. And the other thing from an MVP conversation standpoint with Derek is they're just going to play in a bunch. They're going to play Denver games, just are going to look difficult. Then they're going to play games. They're going to play 4 games in their division that are going to be viewed as premium games, right? Chiefs,
Chargers, and Chiefs.
Chargers. You're just going to have everyone's going to be locked in on those games, especially if both teams are in good shape. So he's going to have opportunities for these moments that also are required of an MVP. And then, as you mentioned to me before we started the show, this has been a conversation with him before, and I think sometimes that is a part of it. Like, are people already open-minded to the possibility of you winning the MVP? I remember the year before Steph Curry won the MVP, it became a conversation like, this guy, this is different. And it felt like he had some momentum where people were suddenly open-minded to, okay, this guy actually could be an MVP. And he won the MVP, I thought, his first time, in part because of how he had played at the end of the year, the previous season, that it just opened people's eyes. Well, with Derek, his MVP potential year came several years ago, right? And we've been talking since then about, can he be an MVP type candidate again? Well, yes. Yes, he can. And here it is.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a star quarterback who's playing at the way Derek's playing right now, which is clearly, I'd have to look through the quarterbacks, but top 6 or 7 in the league. Like, they played a game against the Steelers. Now he's much older. They had a huge advantage at quarterback. Think about that. Again, peak Ben, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But 2021, so back-to-back weeks against Lamar and Ben, they had a clear advantage last week. Lamar was pretty good, too. I wouldn't say clear advantage, but this week it wasn't even close, right? Wasn't even close. What would the Steelers do to trade quarterbacks with Gruden, right? They would do it in a heartbeat.
I know. This was part of the Terry Bradshaw, Howie Long argument before the game. Did you catch that?
No, what was the argument?
They was arguing over, like, one of them took the Steelers side as Terry had a Steelers jersey draped over. Howie had his Raiders jersey over his shoulder, and they argued about whatever. Just to make them argue.
See, Ben puts up some hollow yards because he threw for almost 300 yards.
What were the number? How many completions? How many attempts?
27 of 40 for 295, a pick, and a touchdown. Now, the touchdown was like a swing route to Najee on that one that he scored, which was pretty cool. But you just watch him. He does look old. And unlike Tom, who's the all-time outlier of outliers, Malcolm Gladwell could just rewrite the book Outliers and just have Tom Brady on the front and just have no pages, and every page was just Tom Brady. No words in the book. Just every page is a picture of Tom Brady. Roethlisberger, to me, is what sports were when we were kids, and the way like our parents or our people we knew talked about sports. Like guys got old, and it used to be at like 35 in baseball, basketball, and football. It's like, it's a young man's game. That meant from like 22 to about 30 was kind of your run. And if you were lucky, you had this 30 to 35 run, but there was beside a kicker and the occasional reliever, maybe a jump shooter in the corner, but not even really. 35 to 40, you were fucked. It was over. You started working normal people jobs. You went into TV. You paid for your dealership. You did whatever you started doing in normal people life. Remember how old John Elway felt at 37 in the Super Bowl? It's like, John's holding on. Roethlisberger's 39 right now, and it feels like he's holding on for dear life. I feel pretty confident Roethlisberger will, well, I don't know his, I was going to say he's retire at the end of the season. He might not go as quietly.
I watched his post game after week 1, him in the suit talking about whatever he was talking about. And I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm watching this guy. No, I can't believe I'm watching this guy right now, still playing quarterback. I feel like this should be his farewell season, and it doesn't feel like, as he's talking, that it's his farewell season. Because he's kind of got them in a tough spot, right?
We have seen...
And they don't have a better option.
No, well, this year, I do think they'll pivot after this year, don't you?
Yeah, but again, you have to have something to pivot.
Well, you just trade your first round pick, or you do something. You go, you cannot.
But there's got to be the player you like. I mean, is Jake Hayner going to be there when you're drafting at 17?
Yeah, but this guy will not be on the team next year. I can't see it. Not if it doesn't.
But I thought that last year about this year.
They were truly pretty fucked this year. I mean, last year they won enough games. Like, do you think they're going to get to 10? If he ages quick, it could fall on him.
The problem's going to be right is that they have to get off the hot starts.
Watt's already hurt. Who knows how long he'll be out? I'm not trying to diminish. Like that was an impressive win today.
Lewis on YouTube says the most impressive thing about the Raiders so far is the defense finally look competent. But this is this goes back to their offense. Like Felix says defense is finally good. Their offense can be really prolific. Derek can be an MVP. So now, I mean, it's not just him, right? I mean, how many touchdowns does Tom Brady have right now?
Well, how many he threw today?
5, I think, at least 5, because he threw 2 to Gronk. Did Mike Evans catch 2?
He had 1. Yeah, Tom Brady today, guy, 5 touchdowns, no picks. So he's got 9 touchdowns through 2 weeks. He's the touchdown leader.
Yeah, so he might be the MVP. Again, I wonder if everyone's kind of open to Tom being the MVP. We'll see how the voters, if he gets the respect that he deserves.
He does have 3. Like, does he really need a 4th?
Yeah, I think he probably does. Feels like he should retire with more than 3 MVPs.
I give Derek a lot of credit for a guy that's taken a lot of shit to keep improving, because I think that is really the story of Derek. He just keeps getting better, and I think it speaks to his work ethic, and just him and Gruden clearly figured this thing out.
Yeah, and it's a credit. It is a credit to Gruden. We talk about some of the things that the Raiders have been missing, right? But Gruden's thing is this, and it's going well in terms of Derek's development.
Offense.
Evolution. Offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, someone said in the chat earlier, he's going to get broken off here soon. Right? The MVP really would solidify that. But you win an MVP.
Well, then immediately he's a $40 million quarterback. I mean, he is the way he's playing right now.
Yeah, he doesn't need an MVP for
that. What would Washington or the Giants or all these teams pay him? Steelers?
For sure. But I was going to say, not even from a financial standpoint, you win an MVP in the stratosphere of player that you are now. There's no debates about, is this a top 5 guy? You just are.
Changes a lot. When you brought up Tom, it's going to be probably harder, as it is always, most years to win an MVP. It's difficult.
One guy gets it, right?
Yeah, one guy gets it.
Sometimes 2, but who did Peyton share it with? Like
McNair.
McNair, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Russell's never received a vote.
It's crazy.
No.
And I thought, that was one of my takes last week that I don't think I sent this to you. I almost texted this to you. Like, we were texting about things that we were going to talk about today, was that I'm about to double down on Seattle, because I said last week, I think one of the things with Seattle is they just might this year, watching them against the Colts, be the team that doesn't do the dumb things occasionally that Seattle does. Now, this is the NFL. This isn't college football. You can lose a game and, whatever. I thought they'd be less of a roller coaster this year, and they were not less of a roller coaster in week 2 against the Titans. They had that game put away, and they got beat at home.
I mean, they were up 24-9 at halftime. 24-9. I stopped paying attention. I just assumed it was a blowout. Didn't you? Like Todd Downing, Titans are in shambles. I'm going to look up. It's going to be 40-17 type final score, right? Probably get a couple extra just Russell bombs in the second half to really just get Russell cocky and Pete and them all feeling each other in the 12s and woo. And when that game, I think you were the one that alerted that it was close. I was shocked. I stopped paying attention. I got to go back and see the second half there because that makes no sense. The Titans were getting their ass kicked. That's a bad loss. And somehow those Cardinals, who were just watching that game, I just felt like, this is probably they're going to end up dropping it. Somehow they win because Minnesota misses a 37-yard field goal. Yep. So today was a sneaky big. This is why the Niners had to go 2-0 in these games because it starts getting really hard. And you got to give the Rams, they had one of the more bizarre fuck-up punts. Guy, they hit the up protector. It hits him. He acts like it's someone just tapping him on the shoulder. He's unfazed. He just runs like it's normal. Bro, the ball just hit you. You think it just ended up in the punter's hands? He didn't break stride. And you talk about focus. He was super locked in. But there is part of like being super locked in and being just a player. When you go to these coaching meetings that I used to go to sometimes just to be a fly on the wall, just it helps you scout or whatever, they're big on that. Like, listen, what we're teaching, you got to take to the field. But you also have to just be a playmaker, right? So have some instincts.
Right.
When the ball hits you, man,
do what you're told.
It shot the other way. Like, what did you what did you think hit you? Do you think someone ran into you?
You're not thinking.
He ran, he split, but like the guard in the center, like he was going to cover. Meanwhile, the punter's chasing the ball and it's just chaos, and he's sprinting down the field. That's the craziest thing I saw today. But I also give him credit. Like, that's his job. He might play 4 special teams. He doesn't play offense or defense. He's just locked in.
Maybe it's possible that he would say he didn't even feel it. I don't know if there's been a post-game comment from him on that. But
away game, super loud. It's not out of the realm of possibility, right? Just so much noise. It just hit his pad.
It's a sport of contact. You're just used to just random things hitting you that you can't pay attention to, I don't know. That's wild.
If you did feel it, though, and not think like, I bet it just landed in my punter's hands. That's pretty absurd.
Oh, Coach, I just follow the assignment. That's what I do 100% of the time. I follow the assignment.
Yeah. You said I got the A lane, so I had to keep my lane.
Yeah, Bones, the only special teams coach I know would not be happy.
So there were 2, because at one point in time, everyone was tweeting that the Wests, they hadn't lost.
Yeah.
Right. And then the Chargers and the Seattle Seahawks had some pretty kind of kick in the dick losses. Because I'm watching the Charger game thinking Herbert's kind of slicing and dicing them, but he was also could have thrown a couple picks. Something's just weird with the Cowboys, but not that weird with the Cowboys because they got so many sweet players. Micah Parsons, guy, he's a stand-up linebacker. He's like Dre Greenlaw. I mean, that's his position. He's a Sam linebacker. Do you see today? They just moved him to defensive end. Yes. And if you watched him, he had a couple rushes. You're like, kind of looks like a fucking $20 million pass rusher.
Well, by the way, wasn't that game like an obvious I don't remember what the over-under on that game was, but it was high. Chargers Cowboys. It was
60 maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. High. It was really high, but 20-17 was the final score. Like that under hit by a mile.
Yeah, by a lot.
That was a really
was 14-14 at halftime, and then there was just nothing in the second half though. Because at halftime you're thinking there's gonna be some fireworks. And there just weren't.
Herbert threw a couple of picks, almost threw for 400 yards. I mean, there was the sequence back to back. It was seconds apart where the Cowboys hit the game winner and the Vikings missed the game winner. Seconds apart, like with zeros on the clock.
Yeah.
John, this podcast is brought to you in part by our fans at Manscaped. Manscaped.com, promo code HAM. Manscaped.com, promo code HAM gets you 20% off and free shipping. Go get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the USA and Canada.
Right now, right? Manscaped.com.
Don't get furry for the winter there, Canadians.
No, exactly. Manscaped.com.
Canadian goose.
Manscaped.com. Promo code HAM. 20% off, free shipping. You also, we got the Lawnmower 4.0. They sent the nose trimmers. It's incredible. Look, Haberman, you had nose hairs everywhere. Use the trimmers. Now it's clean. No one could see it on camera. HD, I was watching them. I couldn't see them.
But you're right about that. The camera was a little high. You definitely weren't going to get nostril. But yeah, look, the 4.0 gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off whenever you need for precise shaving. The new trimmer even allows you to customize your trim all over through additional guard lengths, sizes 1 through 4. So, you could even do a fade if you wanted, do a tight fade. And was that ombre? Where women get their hair, it's one shade and then goes down to another shade. You could do the ombre. I don't know if it would do the ombre.
I was thinking you were saying the one where they shave half their head but keep the sweet. That's kind of a sexy look.
Yeah. And the other thing is it's just kind of sleek looking, like you got it in the bathroom, wherever you keep it. It just makes you look like a modern man. The optimized Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is waterproof, so you can groom in the shower, not have to worry about making a mess on the bathroom floor, from the window to the wall. So 20% off, free shipping. HAM, that's the code, everybody.
Promo code HAM.
Tell
your friends.
Manscaped.com. Promo code HAM. What else you got?
You just want to do 20 minutes on Jake Hayner? Because
let's keep going. We talked about him a little earlier, but
I guess before that, it really is a special place. Like there are a lot of places that get talked about. I know in the West you were just calling a game. I know it was a rainy night, but that place is the loudest place on the West Coast. Oregon, Autzen Stadium. My cousin Kenny has played there countless times. You couldn't talk to the guy next to you. Have you been to a game there when you just on the sideline? Have you done a sideline game there?
No, I don't think so.
From everyone that I've known, I've never been to a game that is historically loud. Penn State's opening, when they do the whiteout and the place is rocking and they all have the pom-poms and they're all in sync. In all of football, I would put that right up there with, you could just go all of sports. It is a truly, truly special environment. It was so badass. Just the walkout in the white. But even when they scored a late touchdown to take the lead, that place was just like, yeah, this would be a fun place to watch a football game.
Pom-poms are, I'm not being funny here, pom-poms kind of underrated as like a sweet thing if the whole crowd has it. Looks awesome.
But they know the timing perfectly. So the pom-poms all go up and back at the same time. It's not like half of them are, it's not their first rodeo. It's remarkable. And then when you factor in the SEC, and it was badass, leading into easily the most badass thing, I would say, of Saturday or Sunday. Jake Hayner is just on an all-time heater right now. He might just be a good player, right?
I think he is a good player.
Yeah. He went to Washington when they were kind of in their heyday, right? With Chris Peterson winning a bunch. Was he going to be the guy that took over for Browning?
Well, they had several. One of the stories was they had a really stacked quarterback room. Like they had several guys who were like, who's going to win this job? One of them, I think Colson Yankoff was one of them. He was actually, you saw him talking to Jake post game. He's on UCLA now. But they had several players. Yeah. Jacob Sermon, who's there now as their starter. Jacob Eason. They had all these Jacobs. And there were a lot of people. I've talked to somebody who was around that team every day who thought that Jake Hayner had earned the job, had beaten out Jacob Eason. And maybe it was close, but they went with Jacob Eason, and Jake Hayner transferred immediately, like the next day, because he thought he'd won the job. And again, a lot of people thought he had won the job. And I think he's proved to be a better college quarterback than Jacob Eason was. And he's a better college quarterback than most college quarterbacks. Like he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football.
And what's really weird, and I would love to ask Chris Peterson about this, when I watch him play, I think this guy, and he's on a really good team, and I think I liked him more than you did. I really believed in this team, what I saw against Oregon, and I understand people going, Oregon's overlooking them. I get it, but just watching their lines, watching how good Hayner was, I just remember watching Hayner a little last year.
Yeah.
And then just knowing people around the program telling me how good the coach is, who's also their coordinator and play caller, offensive guy.
Yep.
So I start viewing him as like, is he just a Power 5 head coach? And the Dogs are going to be really lucky, hopefully, to have him for 3 years. Hell, maybe just, the way college football is, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's like a one and done. You just never know if he goes 11-1 and wins the Mountain West. And
but this is his second year as the head coach.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't count. You're right. So he'd be 2 and done, but it would feel like 1 and done because you finally got him in a start to finish season. You're like, we could win with this guy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But to me, Hayner reminded me of, and you and I saw it firsthand, those Boise teams under Chris Peterson were unreal. College football was a little different back then, right? They would not be as good as like last year's Alabama team or the LSU team 2 years ago. Like they weren't on that level, or some of the Clemson teams. But at that time, I think that some of the teams, they weren't like SC didn't have a huge powerhouse team. The SEC was pre-Saban. They weren't as good as the urban Florida team. But I swear to God, I thought that team there weren't 5 better teams than them in the country. And that guy, Jacob Hayner, is like, to me, he felt like peak Boise. He would have gone there, kicked ass. They kicked ass with Kellen Moore. This guy is dramatically more talented. He's got a much better arm. He's got an arm like Derek or Zach Wilson, throwing sidearms. He was the best player on the field last night against UCLA, who's clearly pretty good and has a bunch of pros. He was one of the best players on the field. Obviously, Kayvon gets knocked out, was the best player on the field. But when they played Oregon, how many guys, Oregon too, were better than Hayner in that game?
Yeah,
Short list. And Oregon's, what are they ranked, guy? 3rd?
4th. He's better than both Pac-12 quarterbacks that he's played this year. He's better than most Pac-12 quarterbacks. I mean, I think you could argue he'd start for almost every. I said after the Oregon game 9, but I'm not going to repeat myself on that because I already said it on the show. But you know what I thought watching him on Saturday night was this is an NFL quarterback. This isn't just a really good college quarterback. And is this a first round quarterback? And you texted me that today too. I had that thought watching him against UCLA because here's the thing. That's a killer loss for UCLA because they're trying to go unbeaten. And they had just beaten LSU and they're coming off a bye, which is kind of a weird early bye. I thought UCLA looked pretty good. Now, they had some breakdowns in the secondary, but I watched UCLA and thought, I think they're damn good. Like, that was part of what made it so impressive was Jake Hayner didn't just beat some team that didn't take Fresno State seriously. UCLA on defense, again, some breakdowns in the secondary, but they fly around. Like, they are a really aggressive defense, and clearly they're really explosive on offense, and they showed up. And that was a physical-ass game. And I saw it last year with Hayner. He lost their season finale against New Mexico last year. Rocky Long, they got after him, but it was similar in that he got hurt bad in the end zone last year, the last game of the year against New Mexico. I thought he was done for the day. I don't know. Maybe he missed a snap, came back, same deal, like limping off the field, and it's not fake with him. Like, he is just tough as nails. And that's the one thing I do wonder about is because the first thing you say is, well, he's not very big. It's like, yeah, but Kyler's not big and Baker's not big. And like the league is clearly more open-minded to quarterbacks that are 6 feet tall.
Is that what he is?
He
looks that. Yeah.
He takes shots.
Yeah.
Like, Kyler doesn't get hit this much.
Well, because I went to bed last night, so I, missed the last 5 minutes, which were clearly remarkable.
You went to bed or fell asleep watching the game?
Fell asleep. I woke up like 5 a.m. I mean, I was out, right? And the TV was still on. I turned the volume down, but I looked at my phone and just saw, and I immediately
That's
turned
why
to
you
Pac-12
sent me
Network.
the photo this morning because you didn't realize. Okay.
No. So I go to Pac-12 Network, and they're replaying, the Pac-12 After Dark, and they're talking a lot about that game. And I watched Chip. They go to Chip, and Chip even said, I told these guys, like he was very complimentary of Fresno State, how good these guys were. Yeah, I didn't really have to tell them. We just turned on the tape. They just played Oregon. And then with Hayner, he's like, we threw everything at him. We gave him 3-man rushes, dropped everyone back. We blitzed the house. We blitzed one guy. We did it all, and he beat us. Basically, kind of tipped his hat to the kid. Like, this guy.
He said it. I think he said it's one of the greatest quarterback performances he's ever seen.
He was fucking remarkable. I mean, he's an NFL player. I mean, there's no doubt. 10 years ago, you'd nitpick him, not big enough, all that stuff. Right. I don't see how you can say that now.
Well, but again, is he a first rounder? Because I think if Derek Carr had come out now, Derek Carr would absolutely have been a first round pick. Like, it's crazy given Derek's skill set that he was not a first round pick.
Well, if Hayner was at Oklahoma and doing what he's doing, he'd be in the front runner for Heisman. I saw last night the official front runner for Heisman, because there's not a good one this year, is now the Ole Miss guy.
Oh, Matt Corral, because he had a bunch of touchdowns the other day. He had like some historic Saturday
against
in
Tulane.
terms of rushing and passing. Yeah.
Now, he's a talented player, but he actually a little bit like Hayner, smaller, athletic, big arm, very similar. He is not 6'4". Corral.
No. He's a little thicker.
thicker,
It
yeah.
seems like, I think, but
Yeah.
But to your point, like there's not, and you said this the other day, there's not like these clear-cut quarterbacks this year, right?
It's just between those two, who else have you seen? They're like, yeah, I'd want that guy to be my starting NFL quarterback. I haven't seen one.
Spencer Rattler.
No,
I mean,
I'm out on Rattler.
So Jake Hayner could be the first quarterback taken in the draft. Like it's because here's what he is going to have is people are going to watch him. They already are and go. So the one thing that matters the most, how you play football, this guy is fantastic at.
Coaches are going to love him, right?
I mean, he's a Danville. He's a Bay Area guy. We already mentioned that, but here's a reminder.
Danville Ertz is clearly up there. Hayner's right up there. CJ Anderson is from Vallejo, but he's now coaching, I think, maybe not Hayner's school, Monte Vista. That's Adam Peters' school. There's Monte Vista, and there's another high school, I think. Maybe Jake Hayner went to the other one. But, yeah, pretty incredible performance.
It was.
I can't tell you, Guy.
Yeah.
Now, part of it was, I actually don't even think it was that much of the gambling win. It was like I just took a lot of pride in watching that guy. Like, he just represented this program and know how much pride people around that city take in their football program. To me, he's everything. If you could, draw up a football player at Fresno State. I saw Derek. Paul Gutierrez tweeted it out. I think he opened up his press conference like this. He's like, if you're a kid in California, where else you want to play? We've beat them 4 times in a row.
UCLA, yeah.
They've beat them at the Rose Bowl 3 straight times. Like it's one thing to beat someone 1 straight time. Hell, even 2, 3 straight times at the Rose Bowl for Fresno State.
And I think at the Rose Bowl. And I go back
they were
to
good.
Yeah, that's what I see. I go back to there have been years where UCLA wasn't good, and it's still a big deal. But I think UCLA is actually like UCLA could win
9 games
this year.
Yeah.
I think they could win. Like ASU's not winning I mean, it's just there are too many other teams in terms of the Pac-12 South. Like they could.
Arizona give them a run for their money. You think
Arizona has got some work to do, John? They lost to NAU, who had been blown out twice by teams that you are not familiar with. So,
Colorado got their ass kicked by Minnesota.
Yes, they did.
Well, you know why?
Yes, they did.
Because I watched Minnesota against Ohio State. You know what my takeaway is? Minnesota's pretty good, right? And Colorado just probably a couple years away. Utah lost to San Diego State. My other take, Mountain West, not bad.
San Diego State's good, yeah. But you can't lose. Yeah, you can't lose that game.
I think you can. I mean, they're probably a little closer.
John, you can't lose that game after you just lost to BYU the week before if you're really a team that people want to be taken seriously. I thought they were going to be, but nonetheless, did they already talk about the game? Kenneth asked on YouTube. I'm not sure which game you're talking about, but probably.
Yeah, probably.
I think if we talk about the Raider game or the Niner game, we did. So a 6-letter on YouTube says Hayner reminds me of Heineke.
Heineke was a really he was a
Big Ten somewhere.
No, it was like a UC Davis type school. It was Old Dominion.
Old Dominion.
Because they showed during the game a picture of him, or no, it was on my Barstool, tweeted it out during the Thursday night game. Like they must have won either the national championship or a game to get to the national championship, right? Division I AA when they go to the the final 16 teams, they play each other like bracket style. And he was like shotgunning beers after a big win with like with a coach. I think he was like just a big time small school, kind of like probably a lesser version of like Jimmy,
Yeah.
Because he was undrafted. But he's 6'1". Yeah, I mean, honestly,
have you watched Liberty? Somebody, I said Malik Willis in the chat. Somebody said Malik Willis from Liberty. I saw him on a draft board. I have not watched him.
Well, you know who his coach is?
Hospital Hugh.
Hospital Hugh. Yeah. Jesus with some strippers. Or prostitutes.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's just on his phone he had some prostitutes, but every day he tweeted from the Ole Miss account about religious quote. So people thought he was a little hypocritical.
Yeah, I mean, it's
he was married as well. That was part of it, right? Married.
Everyone's just trying to do their best.
Yeah. And I think what always gets back to
best is worse than others.
The defining characteristic of Hugh is he's an incredible offensive play caller. That's what it always gets back.
That's what matters here.
We'll get them in this. I do think my takeaway from Oklahoma yesterday was like they had an incredible run of 3 straight quarterbacks who with Lincoln, this kid's not that level.
Which of course most guys would. I mean, we're talking about number 1 picks that lived up to it.
Yeah, but he's somewhere in the. He's not bad, right? He's not like JT Daniels or Barkley, a guy that clearly could never live up to the hype. Even Mark Sanchez in college, I know he got drafted 5th, but it always felt like, wanted a little more when he was playing. He's fine. He's just a solid player. I just don't think he's going to get drafted.
Most guys, and we all know this if you're watching a football, don't look like Jake Hayner.
No, I love Jake Hayner. He's my favorite player right now in all football by far. Yeah, I love Jake Hayner.
Everybody start sending messages to Jake Hayner. If you're listening to this or watching this right now, there's a lot of you, we know. Tweet at him, IG, TikTok him, whatever. But tell Jake Hayner, Ham wants to talk to you.
So you're dropping like flies. You're trying to get a fly. They're impossible to drop.
Bastards, and they get in your dome, too. Like chasing Steph Curry around screens. All right. Good show, everybody. Big week ahead. We'll have a DraftKings game out. Puesto.
Welcome to the pod, Puesto.
Tito.
Love you, Tito.
Manscaped. Keep going. My bookie.
Love our partners.
All right. Thanks for hanging, everybody. Good work.